Today we're going to cover volume, frequency, intensity, and the balance between those three pillars that will contribute to you understanding how to auto-regulate your own training splits. So what does that mean, what I just said? It means that everyone will have needs that will need to be adjusted as you maneuver through your training. So let me give you an example. If you decide to pick full body training based on your development, you will not need much volume to make progress because your development's quite low. And like I said, explained in my previous video, that it will only take 1 to 2 sets on a body part to elicit a response that brings about good hypertrophy. When that training volume is incredibly low, the damage that occurs from that training is incredibly low, which means recovery is very efficient. And you can do that training every other day. So your frequency is very high. Now, what's the advantage of that? Let's take a beginner that only needs that level of volume, and they compare themselves to a beginner that decides to pick a split body part routine. These both have the same needs, but beginner A chooses a full body split, and then they expose themselves to, let's just say on average, 3 times a week, or over 2 weeks it would be 7 times of training a body part. Over 2 weeks, the individual that's chosen the split body part routine only exposes themselves to 2 stimulus over those 2 weeks. So we've got 7 lots of stimulus versus 2. Every time that you expose yourself to that stimulus, you make a small step forward in progress. So when we think over 4 weeks, beginner A has exposed themselves to 14 lots of stimulus. Beginner B has only exposed themselves to 4. And again, we extrapolate that into 2 months, 28 versus 8, etc., etc. If you do that math over a year, which I haven't done, and I can't be asked to get that wrong off the top of my head, but you can see the numbers are quite stark in terms of their difference. And this is why training to your needs is so important, because if you do not train to your needs, you're going to limit your progress hugely. And then again, the only situation where this wouldn't be the case is that you just really don't enjoy full body training. But it's quite hard to argue the rate of progress in terms of difference, because if over a 2-month period we have 28 stimulus, and let's say every single stimulus gives you a tiny bit of muscle gain, versus 8, at the end of those 2 months, the reason that you're doing this is to look better and then feel better and whatnot. You look at beginner A, and as beginner B, if I look at beginner A and I'm thinking, fuck, that dude is making progress so much faster than me. Although I don't enjoy full body training, I do want to speed up this process at the rate at which I'm making progress. So it might be worth me considering that training split, because realistically, it's actually more akin to my needs right now. We've gone through a whole year of training in this fashion, and beginner A's needs have now changed. And it now requires slightly more volume per body part to bring about the additional hypertrophy response. When he increases that volume, he also now increases his recovery demand. So now he needs 3 or 4 sets on a body part. When we train something at 3 or 4 sets in a body part, we cannot then train it at the same level of frequency, because we can't recover in just 2 sleeps to be able to hit that again. Now, although DOMS is not a reflection of if after 4 very hard sets on a body part, if after 2 sleeps you're like, do you know what, that body part's not ready to train again, you cannot train at that frequency. So frequency will be adjusted as a reflection of your volume. And as your volume increases, because you need more volume, because your development has increased, which is another topic we'll get into again, but just for now, it stands true, because we cannot just rely on entirely low volumes to get to our progress. But that's not our end progress in terms of our goal. But that's not to misconstrue that what I'm saying is that as you keep adding volume, you keep growing, because there is going to be an upper shelf to that. But again, we're getting it a little bit ahead. As we increase our volume, our frequency decreases. So then this is where then it would be potentially an upper lower training split. And then with that, we're then training for something maybe every 3 sleeps, because we would train upper, lower, rest, upper, lower, rest, upper, lower, rest. Again, as our need for slightly more volume increases, and instead of now just being 4 sets, it might be 6. And this is where we would train legs, because we would potentially train push, pull, legs, rest. push, pull, legs, rest. So as our volume increases, our frequency decreases. So this is just the point I'm trying to make. The relationship between volume and frequency is key. And then your volume needs are a reflection of your development, and then your frequency will adjust. So this is the fluidity component to training, because from week to week, you might be able to do more volume and recover fine. Whereas some weeks you might really struggle with your recovery and then your volume will decrease, but your frequency needs to stay the same because just your recovery capabilities are kind of changing as your development increases and your strength increases and your ability to train hard increases. Now, where does the intensity component come into this? If you're training everything to failure, your recovery demands are going to be quite high. And this is probably one of the rare situations where I do have a firm absolute opinion, and that is that we do need to train body parts to failure. Again, I'm going to get into another video that we will call effective reps, that we cover this specifically. But just for all intents and purposes here, we're going to consider all of our training to be failure training. And when I say that, it means that you cannot complete a concentric rep on your own without assistance. So that's training to failure. And with the relationship of volume, frequency, intensity, these are the three things that we need to always balance when we structure our training program. But let's just, again, circle back to understanding that as volume increases, frequency decreases, and then intensity will scale potentially up or down depending on your recovery capabilities. So what I mean by that component is that we can then go beyond failure when our recovery capabilities are incredible. Now, what do I deem to be the biggest factor that could influence our recovery capabilities? There are a lot, but I would say the thing that sits at the top over a long period of time would be our caloric status. If we're in a caloric surplus, our recovery capabilities are extremely efficient, which means that we can take things beyond failure by doing potentially forced reps, by doing rest pauses, by doing drop sets, and we can increase our stimulus and recover and make progress. During a caloric deficit, we're going to struggle to do this. When we take a step back and then look at what influences recovery as a whole, I would say caloric status is at the top when it comes to your longitudinal approach to training. So then in a caloric deficit, we don't add things that increase the intensity. On a short-term basis, the things that are going to influence our recovery and then our ability to increase our intensity or whatnot would be sleep, hydration, stress, your macro and micronutrient intake. So again, when I break down to kind of macro level, it would be the percentage to which you need carbohydrates or fats. So there are going to be lots of things that influence your recovery on a short-term status. But if we can manage those really, really well, so being consistent with your sleep, being consistent with your hydration, being consistent with your mineral intake, which will impact your hydration, etc. Again, we'll get into that. These are going to impact your ability to recover. But I wanted this video to kind of reinforce the idea that your volume, frequency, and intensity are extremely interlinked, and that this is very important to understand the relationship between the three to effectively structure your full body training, your upper lower training, your push-pull legs training, and your split body part training. Because if you don't understand the fact that these are the three elements that will enable you to effectively structure those trainings, you're going to fall down in regards to getting the most stimulus that you can, or potentially overtraining, or potentially mismanaging your progress. Because we only have a certain amount of time, and let's not waste it. Like, I want you to be able to watch these videos and immediately step forward in your progress, because you now have a greater understanding of the bigger picture. And each video that we do, I want you to come away from it and think, okay, I know a little bit more, and I can apply this immediately to myself or to my clients, and I can start moving forward.